The Chinese server of Arknights has a new character whose English name is going to be Sand Reckoner, and I want to talk about where the name Sand Reckoner comes from. And specifically, it's from also the title of a treatise by Archimedes about counting sand. And this treatise is notable for a few things. Basically, what Archimedes is arguing is that within the universe there is a finite amount of sand, or a countable amount, an amount that can actually be counted. And he puts some estimates for what the amount of sand could possibly be, things like that. It's a pretty short treatise, only about 8 pages or so. And it's a pretty quick read, but it's interesting because I looked over it the other day, and it's kind of a nice little snapshot into thinking around Archimedes' time, thinking about the nature of the universe, whether the universe is finite or infinite. There's a little bit of debate about heliocentrism and geocentrism, so whether the solar system is centered around the sun or whether it's centered around the Earth. And then beyond those kinds of claims, it also is a pretty good demonstration of how to perform estimation using upper and lower bounds. Archimedes was really good about that, and he actually got really close to developing some of his methods got really close to basically what calculus is, because ultimately what calculus is a perfection or a dramatic refinement on the method of estimation using upper and lower bounds. Calculus does a lot of upper and lower bounds, and you basically just make the estimation more and more correct. And that's kind of where you get what calculus comes out of. So, and it's interesting because Archimedes actually got pretty close before the birth of Christ to developing calculus. His system was already pretty close. And then the Sand Reckoner is also notable for being an early text about how to write large numbers, because it's not just a matter of, when it comes to discussing large numbers, and it's not just a matter of contemplating the number itself, but it's also just writing it. When the numbers are sufficiently large, it gets harder to write them. And so we get some early principles of exponentiation developed, of how to write numbers with exponents, and things like that. And you can especially think about how the Greek system for writing numbers, they didn't use the nice numeral system we've got. They basically count with symbols, and it's very inefficient, and it would be very, very laborious to write a large number with. And modern mathematics includes all kinds of ways to write large numbers, which are kind of fascinating, and some people kind of like that can be a whole field unto itself, how to write large numbers. But yeah, so the Sand Reckoner is just kind of this interesting thing, this interesting treatise, which, like, if you want to give it a look, it's a pretty chill read. And I'd learned about it during my undergraduate in mathematics, but I'd never actually read it until a couple days ago. And I was just like, yeah, this is pretty chill. And again, I just think kind of the snapshot into scientific thinking, well, not mathematical thinking, several thousand years ago is really cool. Archimedes was a very smart guy. And it's interesting to see what holds up well, what doesn't, and that actually kind of highlights how mathematics is different from the sciences in a lot of ways, because Archimedes' claims about that would fall under the physical or the scientific realm, his discussion of heliocentrism and geocentrism and the finitude of the universe, those claims don't necessarily held up very well, whereas the mathematics is all as good today as when it was written. So it's kind of interesting to just compare math and science in that way, because math gets lumped in with the sciences, but math is a different thing. Math's got its own thing going on compared to the sciences. And in texts like the Sand Reckoner, it kind of is a demonstration why there's a difference, and why you can't just use scientific principles or mathematical principles interchangeably, and that they actually do have a different operation. Because yeah, like the mathematical claims in the Sand Reckoner are as good as they ever were, whereas the physical claims are not. And the timelessness of mathematics is always an interesting phenomenon, and how time, with like relatively few exceptions, it's like there's not like mathematical claims stay good, and we're not like discovering new evidence that would refute like most historical mathematical claims, whereas physics, our understanding of physics changes a lot over time. And that's just kind of an interesting contrast. But yeah, so the Sand Reckoner, cool text. Just thought I'd give some context. And also, if you're, I should have put this up at the front, but if you're not familiar with the use of the term reckoner, like these days we usually use the term reckoning for it's like you experience a reckoning when something bad happens to you. But what the origin of that term is, it's actually going back to accounting. So like to reckon is to basically like put things into to set accounts straight. So a reckoning is putting things into account, getting accounts straight. So we talk about a reckoning being a bad thing because if people have done a lot of bad things, then when a reckoning comes for them, all the debts that they owe to their victims are being charged. That's where the contemporary use of the word reckoning comes from. It's all the evil that somebody's being done in the past is brought to bear against them, and they have to pay for the debts that they have incurred to humanity. So that's the classical sense of reckoning, and it's still relevant in like things like accounting, and it generally does have this like numerical counting kind of concept that still even though it's a bit of an archaism, even though it's less common, you can still reckon with things, and that deals with counting and getting the numbers right and figuring out what the state of an account is. So yeah, that's the Sand Reckoner. I think it's a cool little thing. And this is an Arknights. The fact that the Arknights character has the name is really just an excuse to talk about Archimedes text, because old texts are cool, and you can learn a lot. Like some of the things you can learn from the Sand Reckoner, even though it's not necessarily something you'd read for direct educational purposes, it wouldn't be something you'd learn. Like if you wanted to learn how to write large numbers or perform bound-based estimation, it's like you wouldn't read the Sand Reckoner for that. But you can learn a lot by reading it for its historical value and understanding how human knowledge changes over time, as well as human expertise and things like that, and just thinking how debates happen now and in the past. And also, just as a last footnote, heck the Romans. This is a relatively little known piece of history is while the Romans do have a certain fame for being good about engineering and promoting engineering throughout their empire and being good about that, under the Roman Empire, the study of mathematics languished. It was really bad. Archimedes is virtually like after Archimedes, there isn't a significant mathematician for centuries in Europe. Probably millennia realistically. You have like Hypatia, but I'm not entirely sure what exact contributions like she left us with. Realistically, if we're talking about mathematicians who actually have a significant impact on modern mathematics or a significant contribution, I think we're probably talking more. We're probably not talking about anyone until the Islamic mathematicians like Al-Khwarizmi. It's like after Archimedes, there is kind of just a long time in the European region, specifically, where there just is not any interesting mathematics going on and not much mathematical research. But anyway, sorry, that's just a footnote. Where the Romans aren't all they were cracked up to be in a number of ways, and one of them is mathematics research. They didn't bother with mathematics research, and despite how advanced Archimedes' mathematics was, it took centuries until we started seeing significant progress in mathematics again. And it was only after the Romans were out of the picture. So yeah, with that, take care, be safe, and see y'all on the flip side. Au revoir.